So, in light of the Epstein files and in light of some of the things that have been going on for me for the past couple years, I had thought about, and I know, like I said, that I'm going to face repercussions, but I'm trying to hold this too because I know some people say, oh, you don't hold the camera in this. And okay, well, I have cerebral palsy, but not to the extent that actually two driving instructors, not just one, but two driving instructors lied about it, and then one had even made a sexually harassing remark. Part of the reason I remember that especially is because I was first getting evaluated during the week that Kanye West had threatened the pogroms when he said something along the lines of that he was going to quote unquote death con on all Jews. And that was, trying to remember exactly, it was certainly in October, and it was October 10th, and it was around Columbus Day. And reason I remember that so acutely is because, well, great-granddad, I didn't know at the time. Well, actually, I did know that great-granddad was a pogrom survivor, but I didn't know the extent. And great-granddad was born on October 23rd, 1904, the same day of the pogrom in Kaniv. And it turns out that he had relatives in the Kyiv area. Anyway, so that's part of why that memory sticks with me most acutely. It was already a time where it was like, just with a lot of personal and family history being evoked, and of course Columbus too was a hidden Jew, so think about someone threatening pogroms in a time in your life and in your family history where it's that we've already been through the pain of what pogroms are like, and then you have the fact that, well, Columbus himself was persecuted, so it's like I was already having kind of a rough week. I was already tired. I was already having OCD and other flare-ups. And so didn't make my life easier. So Timothy Jones, the instructor at Rehabilitation of Frederick, at one point we were talking and he said, and I quote, "I talk to my kids about everything, including sex." At first I thought that was a weird comment and I let it go. And then I realized in no way is that appropriate for a driving instructor to ever tell a student. And I thought about, if he thinks he can make a remark like that to me and I'm his driving student, what does he think he can do to other students with disabilities? And some of them have probably gone through sexual abuse. Some of them have also gone through other much worse abuse than I ever will. And then what compounded that is that he acted like everything was okay, I was doing well on my driving test generally, etc. Well, then he said to me, as if he thought it was a game or a joke, and he thought it was funny, if you can't steer, you can't drive. Well, I was steering. I was taking my time. I was making sure that I wouldn't hit people. And then he said that I have neurospatial issues, which I don't. In May of 2023, I was able to conclusively prove that I, in fact, do not have neurospatial issues, and I was able to get my learner's permit reinstated. Well, so that's May 2023. Jump to, jump to 2024, when Tammy Phipps had lied about submitting the records to the DMV in Maryland on time because I had to go down to Virginia to get the evaluation done. She also lied and said that I have neurospatial issues, again, despite that I had already gone to an ophthalmologist. I think she was an ophthalmologist. I'd have to double check. But I was able to prove that I do not have neurospatial issues. And then when I was in the hearing to try to get my learner's permit reinstated again, the judge was totally cool with the fact that Tim Jones had made the sexually harassing remark And he was also cool that Tammy Phipps had lied and said that I have both neurospatial issues. And I found this out during the hearing. Tammy Phipps also said that I have ataxia, which I do not have. And so I've had to be extremely careful in discussing all of this. And that's why I haven't posted as much lately either, because I haven't had the energy, I haven't had the time, and I've just been completely worn out, and I've just been trying to survive for these past few years. All because a bunch of people thought that it was cool to lie about me, and some people would say, well, you're exaggerating, you're this, you're this, you're this. I've read where other people with disabilities and other, for lack of a better term, special needs have had issues with similar agencies, including doors. It helps to know that I'm not alone, but it also feels like, well, I'd be quiet about it because other people are going to refuse to believe me, and then they're going to victim blame me. And actually, that's part of what happened at so-called Hope Bible Church. When I was going through, and I will grant, I never should have joined any one of John MacArthur's dens of wolves in sheep's clothing. But I was going through a hard time at that time. Probably one of the most evil women I've ever met on the planet. When I was talking about some of my struggle with some of that stuff, and I was going through a hard time and all that, I wasn't even saying anything about her. In fact, I stood up for her and for myself, and standing up for her in one way is something that I'll regret doing for the rest of my life. She said to me, "You're pathetic!" And then when I kept trying to talk, she was like, "You have a terrible view of God!" Like I said, probably one of the most evil women I've ever met. And then so, after that whole incident, the so-called church retaliated against me and removed me from their prayer group, and they accused me of using ungodly language. Sadly, when I grew up, I didn't know that I'm a Jewish believer in Jesus, and I didn't read Tanakh or quote-unquote the Old Testament as much as I could have. And so I went back there and I was like, wait, I'm using the language of the Psalms and describing some of my suffering, and they're accusing me of using ungodly language. Like I said, I already should not have joined the, den of wolves in sheep's clothing that so-called Hope Bible Church is. But I'd made a promise to a relative that I wouldn't quote-unquote run from another church. I should have said, once I realized that that church was one of John MacArthur's so-called churches, notwithstanding the motives of Julie Royce, I should have run. I should have said, I'm not going to stay in a place where people worship God with their mouths. But with exceptions, their hearts are as far removed from God as they could be. And so, ever since, especially over a year and a half ago, I've really just been trying to survive. And like I said,